After years of waiting, we finally have an animated version of The Killing Joke. So how is it?
Batman.
So Alan Moore's The Killing Joke has finally been made into an animated film, and a bunch of us were really looking forward to this. We're very excited because they brought back most of the cast from Batman the Animated Series. It's a beloved storyline. It's a really dark storyline, and then when they announced it was going to be rated R, it was even more so just we're finally getting a rated R Batman story based on great original material, and that had a bunch of us excited. This was the right team to tell this story, but unfortunately the end result is really a very strange mixed bag. And so the storyline, if you're familiar with the comic book, is basically the Joker sets out to convince Batman that anyone can be changed by one bad day, and essentially making the argument that that's kind of their story, and that can happen to someone else as well, and can turn even a good man into a bad man, or a Batman. That's the basic storyline of the graphic novel, and that's the basic storyline of the majority of this film. Unfortunately, or I don't even know how to describe what they did with this, other than to say this graphic novel doesn't lend itself to a feature-length film. Therefore, they had to add content to it to fill out the story, fluff things up to get to the proper runtime. Which, there's tons of great Batman material you can put on the front end, on the back end, spice things up in the middle. That's perfectly fine. The problem with what they did here is twofold. First off, as you watch it, it feels like you're watching two totally separate episodes of a TV series. And the first 30 minutes of this feels like, season 2, episode 7. And it's kind of like a random offshoot episode with kind of a weird storyline. They're like, okay, that's interesting. They went in that direction. Okay. And then the second half of it feels like the 2-part season finale. It doesn't feel like it comes right afterwards. The two stories aren't directly related. The tone is different between the two things. It's just like they decided they wanted to add something to the beginning in the same universe. You get that? And then it just goes to this totally other story focused on different characters, different villain, and the storyline doesn't really transfer through to the two things. So problem number one is that what they added to it just feels like more of this universe. It doesn't feel like more of this story. And so especially in a movie format, when you put something and just clunk it right onto the beginning of it, it feels like it should be one story. And this is not one story. This is two stories just told back to back. Not two stories running parallel, not things to build on. No. You hear one story and then it fades to a second story that's the one you came to watch. That's problem number one. Problem number two is that this front story that they told you, like I said before, is not like a great story. It's a story filled with controversial stuff and about the relationship with Batman and Batgirl and what that looks like and where they're going with it. For good reason, a lot of people are kind of scratching their heads going, huh? And you can see why they would choose to do a plot line like this to add stakes to the Killing Joke plot line and where that goes. And they want to add some emotional tension to it. The way they did that, though, is just bizarre. This isn't the best way to do what they were trying to do. And it adds controversy into an already controversial story in a way that's not interesting. Like, The Killing Joke is really interesting because it's controversial in ways that really stretch your thoughts about Batman, the Joker, who's good, who's the monster, why are they doing what they're doing, are they more similar than we think? Like, it's controversial because of the depth it's kind of stirring into things. This is just controversial because they're doing something that'll make you go, I don't think I like that. Why did they go in that direction? And so this is a very strange mixed bag of a story. And the first section isn't terrible. It's just a decent story with elements that most people probably aren't going to like a whole lot. The second one is a very classic, great story, but it doesn't feel like a movie. It feels like a, short film. It feels like an episode of a TV show. And so therefore it's difficult to be like, well, this is just a great movie, when it's more like, well, there's some cool stuff in there. But even it's a little bit tainted because, by the time you get to what should be the beginning of this story, you're already 40 minutes in because of the prologue. And so it doesn't flow right, it doesn't feel right, and even the really good stuff doesn't seem to work really well in this medium. So unfortunately, I have mostly negative things to say about it. It was engaging enough, I was entertained enough, um, but it's just really not as great as it should be. It doesn't live up to the original material, the source material. And for that matter, the animation isn't all that good. Like there's parts you can even watch the trailer, and you'll see parts where people are walking, and it's like clunky like that, and you're looking at it going like, what? Why was the budget so low for this? Why would you tell this story when you didn't have the money to tell it? Or why would you fund this but not fund it enough to do basic animation right? So overall, it was a very disappointing movie. And even more so, they released it in theaters. I didn't actually get to go to the theaters. My sister did. Some of my friends did. I had watched it on the digital version that they've released now, and I guess next week it's going to come out on Blu-ray. But for a movie that they actually went so far as to release in theaters, why was the production so low? Why was it so choppy? Why wasn't more thought put into like writing a prologue story that actually tied into the story that they were about to tell and intertwined things a little bit better? It's just very disappointing. The voice work is, of course, fantastic. While the animation is bad, the drawing style is better than a lot of the Batman and DC animated movies they put out. There is a lot of great stuff in the source material, but I'm just going to go slightly under recommending it. And even that, I'm only really recommending it if you're a big Batman fan. So I'll give it a 6 out of 10. That's a negative review for me. It's the highest negative review I give because if you're a Batman fan, there's a lot of things in here that you'll like. It's just surrounded by so much of a mess. Unfortunately, I've got to go low. If I'm being honest, I would recommend watching a whole bunch of other Batman animated movies over this one. They've put a lot of really good stuff out. Batman Year One, The Dark Knight Returns Part 1 and 2, Mask of the Phantasm. I mean, there's this long history of great Batman animated movies, and this is not on that list, unfortunately. So thank you for watching. If you like this review, please click that like button and subscribe to my channel to find out everything that I put out and all my crazy opinions on stuff. Thank you much.